Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they got it absolutely correct. And as this is the last program for 2023, and as we move into 2024, I want to talk about destroying democracy. But I want to take that democracy and I want to put a line through it, because what's happening is destroying the republic. Now, I want you to understand that what really has been prompting this from me is that I hear the majority of the conservative / Republican, true Republican, so-called conservatives, so-called constitutionalists talking about democracy. But more so, we hear the loud cries of groups, peoples, ideologues, and organizations are destroying democracy. We hear it loudly, especially from those in the media, especially from those that are there in the public eye, especially the bureaucrats, the Biden administration, the political Democrats, or as I always call them and will continue to, the Democrats, because they're virtually straight from hell in everything, especially in their comments of destroying democracy. Now, in the references for the program at samueladamsreturns.net, you can go to the podcast there. It's not word for word. I never do word for word exactly. I do some of that. But in there is that I really look at the worst instances of this idea of destroying democracy are the Repudicans who use the term. They are key to the destruction of liberty and the chaos of destroying democracy in the same context that then is defined by the likes of the enemies to our republic. The World Economic Forum discussion over the last 3 years and its various meetings have set the worst offenders poised to destroy democracy as populist and most recently Christian nationalist. I always thought that and always understood that populist and populism was about the people. The people. Well, wait a minute. Let's consider people, individuals are part of a democracy in an underlying component of coming to society. I don't know. What we have going on here is what we're seeing is that I understand populists to be people, freedom-loving, liberty-minded individuals who participate in governance, the foundational meaning of democracy. That's what that is. Individuals coming together in society to participate in governance. That's family. That's everything local, what then becomes and was the colonies and then became the states. Participation. But how do you participate even in your own towns and townships? Do you? I know I haven't been to a township meeting in quite a long time, but when I'd go, there were a lot of times I was the only one there unless it was some kind of crazy issue. Well, yeah, we're supposed to have representative government, but that doesn't resolve individuals from participating in their governance. Foundationally, that's what happened. I've talked to you many times as to those in particular in the Massachusetts colonies who wrote letters of instruction as the body of people come together and wrote those letters of instruction to their elected representatives. If they didn't do what the people asked, they got rid of them. So I opened briefly with the idea, and since the likes of Tucker Carlson take the time to fully define democracy. No, he doesn't. No, he does not do that, nor do, as I mentioned, others in the conservative movement. So what does that mean? To me, it means that what we have is the substitutive phraseology of destroying, and once again, I put a line through democracy, the republic, because by not clearly defining how democracy should be used from that foundational basis, what's happening is, once again, the word play, the word ownership is taken over by those who are out to destroy our democracy. So factually speaking, I have that the founders of the colonies in the United States wanted to destroy the concept of state or national governance by democracy. They expressly wanted the sovereign citizen, that's you, a person, an individual, who were fully educated in the forms of governance, especially republics, to morally exercise individual suffrage, a vote for representation of all state legislatures as well as the lower house in the national government. So consider St. George Tucker, and here I'll read to you from his references to ancient Greece. I quote, "Thus, while a democracy may be pronounced to be the only legitimate government, and that form of government alone which is compatible with freedom of the nation and the happiness of the individual, we may perceive that it is on every side surrounded by enemies, ready to sap the foundation, convulse the frame, and totally destroy the fabric. In such a government, a sacred veneration for the principles of the Constitution, a perfect obedience to the laws, an unremitting vigilance on the part of the people over the conduct of their agents, and the strictness and strictest attention to the morals and principles of such as they elect into every office, legislative, executive, or judiciary, seem indispensably necessary to constitute and to preserve a sufficient barrier against its numerous foes." What we have in our present time, it is more than just the perception which St. George Tucker referred to. No, we have on every side, surrounded by enemies, as he says, internal foes who are sapping the foundation of constitutionalism, convulsing the frame to include national borders, and totally destroying the fabric of moral governance, the family, the Christian religion, and human biology altogether. What we have, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that you are as capable as I am to go research the various instances of this. They're there. The destruction of our individual rights, the destruction of the very fabric of what can be construed the foundation of democracy, is ultimately working to the destruction of none other than our national character, which is all wrapped up, our national laws, the authority that we relegate to those we elect, are not watched for their moral context, as we've seen in the various articles that I even mentioned in last week's program. No, constitutionalism and even Christian nationalism are, by many who are claiming it to be, destroying democracy. So if you're a constitutionalist, you're out to destroy democracy. I say, by all means, we actors in this should put democracy in its place. So in these last few minutes here in this first segment, and as I do in the newsletter pretty much now, is I want to bring you to a conclusion first. Here it goes. I want democracy to be destroyed. I want the democracy of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, mainstream media, the Democrats / CPUSA, that's the Communist Party, United States of America, and all other subversions of our historical ideology of individual liberty to be destroyed. I want Tucker Carlson and every other Repudicans that uses the word democracy to define what they actually mean and the full context of that meaning in how they use it in relationship to governance. Yes, I do. I want to be a leader in destroying democracy for the sake of maintaining the republic. We must make every effort to destroy democracy, which has been foisted into the conversation, the minds, and sadly, the hearts of many of our citizens. We are responsible to destroy democracy. And here in the newsletter, I have links that you should go to these emphasized areas. We, the people of that are supposed to be in a democracy, we are responsible destroying the democracy from, quote, a party of advanced American democracy, that's in the CPUSA, one who has and is the source to educate the people about democracy, again from CPUSA, and who makes claims to defining as well as being those necessary for the future of humanity related to elementary points on democracy, which is also there a link to the Communist Party USA. All of those that are playing out there are hypocrites. I don't know that I'm going to be able to sum this up for you, but I'm going to go with it as far as I can, and then we'll pick it up in the second segment. Sam Adams would write in his speech regarding the Declaration of Independence is that we have now no other alternative than independence or the most ignominious and galling servitude. The legions of our enemies thicken on our plains. Desolation and death mark their bloody career, whilst the mangled corpses of our countrymen seem to cry out to us as a voice from heaven. Will you permit our posterity to groan under the galling chains of our murderers? Has our blood been expended in vain? Is the only reward which our constancy till death has obtained for our country, that it should be sunk into a deeper and more ignominious vassalage. Oh, there's so much more that Sam Adams wrote. So come on back for the next segment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those Anti-Federalists got it correct. This is Tom Navolis, your host, and I want to destroy democracy that is there, that the proponents of the evil aspects of it, a controlled democracy, as pronounced within a global concept, as well as in America through the Communist Party USA, the teachers union, the different unions that are out there, the bureaucrats, and primarily this Biden administration, and every Pelosi-like, Schumer-like, whatever the names of the other groups of those that hate America, needs to be destroyed. Let me go back to Sam Adams and what he has to say during the speech he gave and wrote on the Declaration of Independence, starting from the beginning of where I did at the end of the first segment. We have now no other alternative than independence, or most ignominious and galling servitude. The legions of our enemies thicken on our plains. Desolation and death mark their bloody career, whilst the mangled corpses of our countrymen seem to cry out to us as a voice from heaven. And here's a quote that Sam gives. Will you permit our posterity to groan under the galling chains of our murderers? Has our blood been expended in vain? Is the only reward which our constancy till death has obtained for our country that it should be sunk into a deeper and more ignominious vassalage? Recollect, who are the men that demand your submission, to whose decrees you are invited to pay obedience. Men who, unmindful of their relation to you as brethren, or your long implicit submission to their laws, of the sacrifices which you and your forefathers made of your natural advantages for commerce to their avarice, formed a deliberate plan to wrest from you the small pittance of property which they had permitted you to acquire. Remember that the men who wish to rule over you are they who, in pursuit of this plan of despotism, annulled the sacred contracts which had been made with your ancestors, conveyed into your cities a mercenary soldiery to compel you to submission by insult and murder, who called your patience cowardice, your piety hypocrisy. End quote from Sam Adams. Ladies and gentlemen, you can take that and you can frame that in our modern time. You know, the murderers are those of the military-industrial complex who have sent thousands and tens of thousands of our young people over the many decades to their deaths. We're seeing what is happening now with all of those with COVID who were pushed into submission and have been dying at early ages. Vassalage, everything that's going on in the movement of sustainability, environmentalism. Buttigieg came out this past week and said, you will not have a gasoline car by 2050. You're all going to be in electric vehicles. You're going to be a vassal. You're going to be a vassal. You're going to be taken into submission by the FBI, by all of the police forces that are being created by the illegal, illegitimate people coming across our border. I have more to say about that. Not sure that I'm going to get to all of it. But it's there at Samuel Adams Returns. There's a lot there in relationship to destroying democracy and what it really means. So we have to look now at the democracy delusion. The delusion that's being foisted on us. De Tocqueville summarized democracy in America as this: the American people, through their chosen representatives who were instructed by their wisdom and experience and were supported by their virtues, cultivated, purified, and ennobled by self-reliance and the love of God, had matured in the excellent wisdom of their councils a new plan of government which embraced every security for their liberties and equal rights and privileges to all in the pursuit of happiness. To add that to the perspective that I gave, and Sam Adams wrote in 1769, that royalty controlled by democracy is solecism in policy. Solecism means the impropriety in language or a gross deviation from the rules of syntax, incongruity of words. We can modernize that statement in that the oligarchs, corporatists, and bureaucrats controlled by democracy is a gross deviation from the rules of words in respect to policies and law. On this program, I am taking you through a lot of what the Anti-Federalists have said. We're going to touch briefly into what the communist delusion has presented. I already gave you a number of the links in that first segment. You need to go back and listen to those or go to the newsletter and actually click on the links. And bring you somewhat into the present with those corporatists, with the World Economic Forum, with the United Nations. So there was a parody that was there, written in 1787 by Montezuma, who was an anti-federalist, to submit to our friends in the first class for the inspection the following defense of our monarchical, aristocratical democracy. The parody is that we should have this Constitution because it is a monarchical and aristocratical democracy being put into place. So first, as a majority of all societies consist of men who, though totally incapable of thinking or acting in government matters, are more readily led than driven. We have thought we have thought it correct to indulge them in something like democracy in the new Constitution, which part we have designated by the popular name of the House of Representatives. But to guard against every possible danger from this lower house, we have subjected every bill they bring forward to the double negative of our upper house and president. Nor have we allowed the populists, is that something like populism? The right to elect their representatives annually, lest this body should be so much under the influence and control of their constituents and thereby prove the weatherboard of our grand edifice, to show the shifting of every fashionable gale. For we have not yet to learn that little else is wanting to aristocraticize the most democratical representative than to make him somewhat independent of his political creators. This is extremely important to really understand, because this is what happens, and I brought this quote to you before. This is what happens when we look at and we hear those people in Congress and the House of Representatives in particular talk about our democracy. The democracy they're talking about is only for them because nobody else is smart enough to participate in governance. There's much more here. A quote from Robert Yates. There's a quote from Richard Henry Lee in talking about even elections and the perspective of democracy in relationship to that. Just briefly, I want to take you into a couple additional comments here. I already gave you those other articles on their Communist Party USA, but what I want to bring to you for this moment of consideration is that the Communist Party USA supported the no vote in August against making the changes to the Ohio state constitution, so it needed to be that 60% margin. You know why? Because democracy was under attack. And you had to stop that so that the people in Ohio could have democracy. But look at the margins in the voting. Look at the margins as I talked about in those other programs. You can go search them at SamuelAdamsReturns.net, or you can actually search them at Wikipedia for the August 23 and then the November 23 elections in Ohio, which turned the whole concept of a guaranteed Republican constitutional governance in Ohio on its head. Because the Communist Party USA, as well as the many others that I name, destroyed the true essence of foundational democracy in the state of Ohio. And in doing so, this is only true because go look at the numbers. True, there was an overwhelming number of people that came out to vote in August. But then when the rubber met the road, the numbers for the most critical aspect of the constitutional amendment to destroy morality and the understanding of parental rights in the state of Ohio, it was less than a third of the people turned out to vote. Where is democracy, the majority, when it came to that vote? Ladies and gentlemen, we have to look at democracy. We have to look at the destruction that is occurring of the definition that de Tocqueville gave, the idealism of American democracy and our constitutional republic. Yep, it's all summed up right there in what we've already been talking about. Democracy within Congress for those who are elected, and as you draw them in and you educate them internally and you separate them from their constituency, you lead to despotism and tyranny. And we're so right there. We're not getting close anymore. We are there. Well, when we come back to the next segment, we're going to talk about UN and globalist democracy. It's not an American foundational concept. Sam Adams understood democracy from the perspective that every person in the community should participate in governance, even the village idiot. So is that you? Come on back in the next segment when Samuel Adams returns. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this last segment of Samuel Adams Returns. This is Tom Navulis, your host. You know the other aspect of what I say in relationship to that. As I ask you to go back and listen to the second segment, if you haven't heard it yet, I do highly recommend that. And I wanted to bring to you, before we get into the international aspects of democracy and how it's viewed and what that means in relationship to us in some regard, I want to bring to you what is there in the weekly news articles, or this week's news articles. Number one and number two are the critical destruction components, well documented and mapped out. The first one is called Mass Migration Blueprints, reveals NGOs carefully planned U.S. migrant invasion, this report says. And with that, it goes to this report is illegal alien invasion maps exposed. So what we have are the large number of non-governmental organizations, both sponsored and paid for by taxpayer dollars here in the U.S., planning this invasion. Then we have the UN, and we have other national or international non-governmental agencies that have been cooperating and defining even the routes and giving people maps and instructions and all of the information they need to get from their countries of origin and illegally cross our borders. Now, isn't this democracy? Isn't this the way that things should work so that we have a broad democratic society? How can democracy work when the individuals entering into the body politic come as criminals with criminal intent? How is it that any other government can allow this and claim, as you'll see in the World Economic Forum videos that I've attached for you, how can they claim, like Costa Rica, that they're the best country in managing all of this migration? Migration is cowardice. Migration is because people do not understand the fundamentals of democracy or liberty. They don't know what it means to be a free people. What they have been is what we heard in the first segment in particular. And what Sam Adams says, they're subjugated. They're minions. They're slaves to the ideologies of their nation. They're slaves of those places that they come to. And now they're emancipated. Yeah, I put the potated in it. They're potatoes thrown into the hopper. Do we mash them or make French fries out of them? I don't know. All I know is that by illegals, lawbreakers, brought in by the greatest tyranny and travesty that is there in this nation, treacherous, traitorous, is allowing people who have zero idea of true fundamental freedom as a free people to enter across our borders against everything in relationship to law is a destruction of our democracy. No, it's a destruction of our republic. And that is the intent. I don't want to go on about the migration component too much. But illegals coming across the border are lawbreakers, so how in the world can they even have a perspective of what true democracy is when they don't know how to have the honor and the fortitude to fight and die for liberty in their own country? When we heard what Sam Adams heard from those who died on the battlefields for American liberty, these people illegally coming into this country are cowards and debased human beings being led by the nose with their rings of slavery or that around their neck and their chains back to the cartels and everyone that they have to pay money. And the theft of these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations from you and from I are abhorrent and fall into the reason why we must destroy their concepts and their pushes of democracy to save the republic. So, when I look at the international concepts of this and the globalism, I have links in there for you to go look at as what the concept of democracy is by the United Nations. Oh, it looks really nice as you look at the first couple of paragraphs, but as you read through that page on democracy, the hypocrisy of that definition, and especially the way that they implement it in various countries, it's beyond pale in respect to the destruction of individual liberties. It's not about individual democracy. It's about managed democracy. Everything that the Communist Party USA is talking about, if you go read it. They say, we can't have a dictator in America because that'll never fly the way we need to. But if we allow people to fake vote, if we direct them in how they vote, and then that's a democratic process that they can cast their vote, but we can control it by virtue of how we get people into office and how we control the bureaucracies. Pretty interesting. So I have for you there also a link for the 2023 World Economic Forum discussion on democracy, and it's a managed form. This panel is really interesting, but I want you to pay attention from the woman from USAID and what she has to say. And then I got questions for you. It's like, how did Costa Rica become the leader in democracy, and what should that look like? What does it look like there, and what should it look like? Do you agree with this outline and description that the World Economic Forum is promoting? Then take a look at the 2022 World Economic Forum discussion as well, and consider these broad thoughts and ideologies from these direct quotes that I have for you here. Democracy is wonderful, Timothy Snyder, the Richard C. Levin Professor of History at Yale University, felt compelled to state. True, says Sherry Raymond, Pakistan's federal minister for climate change, though, she quotes then to say, different countries experience democracy quite differently. True, and that should be. They should have their own forms of governance by what the people establish. But then we go on to Egils Levits, the president of Latvia, was able to point to at least one enemy of democracy everyone could agree on: populism. It offers wrong answers, he's quoted as saying. It offers wrong answers to the right problems, he quipped. So is the global and the U.S. mystification of democracy like that in de Tocqueville's opening comments? In no country in Europe has the great social revolution, which I have been describing, made such a rapid progress as in France, but it has always been born on by chance. There's much more to say in the couple of paragraphs that I quote there, and we don't have time to get into that. He finishes the second paragraph with this thought, though. The consequence of this has been that the democratic revolution has been effected only in the material parts of society without that concomitant change in laws, ideas, customs, and manners, which was necessary to render such a revolution beneficial. We have gotten a democracy, but without the conditions which lessen its vices and render its natural advantages more prominent. And although we already perceive the evils it brings, we are ignorant to the benefits it may confer. What we're seeing in America, these United 50 states, is that democracy is showing its evil side. And there's nobody, no adults in government that are using constitutionalism the way that it should be used to control, yes, I'm using control, to manage the evils of democracy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, when I ask the question, you in destroying democracy, strike out democracy and put in the republic, what do you understand democracy to be? How do you want democracy to act within our constitutional republic? Should we allow the external and internal forces destroying the foundational ideas and implementation of democracy in the United States? Ultimately, I want the democracy concept of those who are redefining historical foundational liberty for the godless, immoral, socialistic, communist ideas of democracy to be rejected and eliminated in our republic. Yes, to be destroyed so that the republic and individual liberty remains the essence of these United States. I want to see the Communist Party USA far-reaching ideology of democracy spewed and inculcated into every fabric of our society and institutions, destroyed, starting with the colleges, the universities, defund them. I do agree that democracy needs to be studied and understood and let to come to that fruition, that moral fruition that de Tocqueville talked about in other countries. But only the American Revolution foundational view of democracy will keep the United States a free, what? Constitutional republic. There's so much more there that I really want to say, but in the end, Sam Adams' wisdom was really, really special. And what he says is, if we love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude than the animating contest of freedom, Go from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your change set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen.